This is going to be an angry black woman's pod, the birds of a feather, because I was supposed to have a job interview, I thought, today. And of course, as crappy as the job market has been to me lately, in these over 3 months that I've been unemployed, I've had to deal with a lot of fake false alarm email notifications. So I got time. It is Wednesday, Super Bowl is Sunday, and I got thoughts. Okay. So I feel very confident still, even on a Wednesday, that my Eagles will win the Super Bowl. Why? Because I feel like the defense was the only factor into why they lost in 2023, and they will not be the reason they lose in 2025. Why? Because two words, Jalen Carter. There's more of a push presence on the defensive line that we did not have, excuse me, as well as linebacker depth. Shout out to Zach Bond as to why the Eagles will prevail this Sunday night. And I do believe it'll be a tight game because we're not stupid enough to expect this team to put a 55-point banger on these hoes, especially after the Commanders game, because I didn't even expect that. I thought that was going to just be like a 30 something to 20 something win. Did not expect 55. So somewhere along the lines, the Commanders stopped taking command. What I will say is that there will be a definite push up the middle that Jalen Hurts is going to have to deal with for most of this game as far as the offensive side of the ball. And I hope he's ready. I'm sure he's ready. I shouldn't even say hope. I know he's ready. But that's something also, too, that considering that the center, Cam Jurgens, has had some back issues, he's going to be tested, as well as Landon Dickerson, because we don't know how functionable his knee will still be for most of those 4 quarters. But that will be a weak side of the O line defending Hurt, as well as Hurts feeling like he has to run when he may not have to. The decision making will be a factor. And I just want to say the decision making has always been a factor with Hurts because he does not make snap judgments when he wants to throw, which is good and bad because we obviously don't want no picks. We don't want no fumbles. And he's managed to do this the rest of the season, pretty much be, pick free, with the exception of maybe one or two late in the season, but it didn't really matter at that point. The point is, I do have faith that Hurts can make this game a masterful win as long as he's continuing to stay as focused as he's been and keeps his eye on the ball, holds on to the ball when he needs to, and lets it fly when he needs to. Because I'd rather him take a sack and hold the ball than losing the ball on a fumble, trying to avoid a sack. So those decisions are important, obviously, to any MVP caliber football player, and Hurts is that. I don't even care if he wins MVP for the game. I just want him to be able to look himself in the mirror after that game is over and say, I did what I could do. I think he had probably a hard time really swallowing that loss, knowing that he fumbled, even though he came back and brought that team within 3 points. Had the defense had held their end of the bargain once it was tied 35-35, they would have walked away with that win. And that faulty call against Bradbury was still shady, but they also shouldn't have been in that position where that call would have made that much of a difference. So the defense had to take the L there too. So both sides had their weak points, but the offense was able to recover a lot faster than the defense did in the second half of that game. This game, I'm hoping it'll be a lot different. I'm hoping that the Chiefs eventually get tired. I don't I never bet against Mahomes because I'm not dumb and because him, like Brady, will always find a way. But even Brady found a way when it was too late in 2018. So it is possible that you can defeat the big bad giant. And I do believe my Eagles can do that this weekend. I'm going to miss out on parties. Life's been very challenging on the financial end with no job. And mind you, there are stuff out there, but stuff that I do not belong in. Trust and believe. I'm not saying there aren't things out there for me, but I'm not going to settle for anything that doesn't belong to me. And I do believe that something is coming soon because we are now nearing month 2 and I'm getting irritated. So enough of that. Won't speak any poorness or any kind of negativity in the rest of this pod because I'm getting it out as I go. So just bear with me. Um, Talking about the latest news that I saw on Threads, because I'm no longer on the Elon-esque platform. I have decided to stick to the meta side, even though eventually that's probably going to go too, because he's a bitch. But I also need to confer and converse with people that I don't know who I will never know. So that's what social media has become for me. Parasocial relationships, that's what it should be. But capitalism is starting to grade my nerves and infiltrate my temple. So some sacrifices have to be made. But anyway, going back to threads, a lot of people have been talking about the fact that the latest thing is that 45 and 47, should I say, will be at the game this Sunday. Not that I care. I'm sure staking his claim, getting some attention just to piss people off. Because there's really no reason for him to be at the Super Bowl. Nobody cares. It's about the football, not him. Just for that, I hope Colin Kaepernick shows up. I hope Colin Kaepernick's in like a booth right next to him and just manages to wave at him like, "Hey, how you doing?" Um, but everybody was talking about the fact that the NFL has decided to take the "End Racism" logo off the end of the field. I personally hated the idea of that. Choose love as well. I'm fine with that being on the helmets because I'd rather, if you're going to have to feel like you have to pander to us since 2020 and everybody was feeling real militaristic for like 1 year, um, and racism is never going to end. So that's just a stupid motto. I don't like them including the Nat Black National Anthem. So 47 is going to have to sit through three anthems and wonder why we're singing that many anthems. But oh well, that's what happens when you pander. And I'm sure that won't happen next year. Um, God forbid, if he's still in office by then. Um, things happen. But I don't think end racism is something that even should have been there in the first place because we all know that the NFL can only cross the line so much when it comes to social justice. If they really cared about social justice, Colin Kaepernick would have been able to finish his career the way it was supposed to end on his terms, regardless of taking a knee, because they ended up catering to all those, um, you know, inciting change or whatever that change campaign is with the youth and stuff. So everything ended up happening the way that Colin wanted it to happen, as far as drawing attention to social awareness and marginalized folks and, the problem of police brutality and crime. And the NFL can only dip their toe so much in that. And we knew that. But it seems mighty hypocritical for them to decide to put in racism at the end of both ends of the field and still manage to not even act like Kaepernick was not part of Super Bowl history. So that's why I say you don't need to bother with worrying about the end racism. It doesn't solve anything, and it doesn't it doesn't generate any kind of unity, because the bottom line is NFL is just about their money, and that's pretty much what the government is. So in a way, I guess it does make sense that 47, now that I think about it, is there because they're all billionaires trying to keep their money in their own circles. So trying to include the general public in that while you're doing it is a loss, lose, because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter about the fans. They're just trying to make money from the fans, just like they make the money off the back of the athletes, which is why Goodell talking about this 18th game crap, acting like these athletes are made out of are robots and made out of steel, when half of them can't even get through a regular season or a preseason for that matter. Unless you're instigating two major bye weeks, that's the only reason why 18 weeks sounds right. But I still say it's greedy because we pretty much have more football than we need at this point. And greed doesn't really do anything but end in corruption. So at this point, if you want to really get on that political tip, end racism doesn't help, and the 18th week does not help. Um, I personally feel like my athletes spend most of their lives dedicated to this sport, and they need to have lives where they can just be themselves and not have to worry about being fit or in shape or stressed out about week to week, and whether their contracts are going to, be seen to the end of them. Are they going to be able to live out their contracts? Are they going to get traded? Just like we're seeing in the NBA right now. I mean, they're trading dudes for half a dollar at this point because they just want to make some ratings. So a lot of this corporation stuff, even as a fan, you can look at it and say, this really has nothing to do with making anybody better. This is just about money switching hands and about reputations being upheld. So, watching Luka go to the Lakers for whatever reason, just to shock the world and upset the Mavericks squad. And apparently, the most looming rumor that might be actually true, which I think really should have stayed the way it was before, is possibly KD going back to the Warriors now. Supposedly is the latest rumor. It hasn't been confirmed. Shams Charania hasn't confirmed it yet, but that is the next little big, huge trade workings. Joel Embiid returned to playing for the Sixers last night, and they won. I wasn't really watching. It's kind of hard to watch the Sixers all the way through sometimes unless there's just absolutely nothing else to watch. And to see them finish the game with Embiid on the team is good because I always feel like the more he's out, the more he kind of upsets the chemistry that they slowly were trying to maintain without him. And now that he's back, it was good to see him back, getting about 30 points, whatever. But they had to shed um one of the twins. And of course his name is escaping me right now because I was not that prepared to talk, but whatever. Caleb Martin. Sorry, Caleb Martin. I said Cody. Caleb Martin got traded, and we got back some guy named Quincy or somebody from the for the Mavericks. Quentin Grimes and a second round pick. So it's whatever. Now, apparently, the last thing I looked at before I decided to record today is apparently that a Kenyon Martin's son, is now going to is he going to Washington? There's some kind of big three-way trade that just got done, but KJ's gone now too. Now, mind you, none of these guys were really factors on the team. There's a lot of bench guys that really they kind of threw in to kind of basically encapsulate one player while Embiid was out. And it seemed like for a while there was no purpose even making Embiid play at this point. Like the season's halfway over. If Sixers didn't even have any All-Star nominees, not even for reserves, which was kind of a disrespectful to Maxi, but Maxi also hasn't really been playing his best because I think part of his support system was broken up once Embiid uh, wasn't able to play consistently. So I think his numbers suffered, and I think also the general outlook of the Sixers is so bleak that I think also, obviously at a popular demand, none of the Sixers carried any kind of sizable votes for the All-Star game in San Francisco. I think it is. It's in the Bay. But the point is, with these athletes and these corporations, you have to understand that as you get older, and I understand as a young fan, all you do is react to things. What I'm learning now, especially with this new, not even new, but this same old boring ass corrupt administration starting to take place all over again since 2016. And even with Biden in between, it really doesn't make a difference, really, because a lot of stuff kind of really didn't change. It's just a lot more um, it's a lot more blatant and consistent news going on because that's just how this administration is choosing to work. They're basically doing everything without rules, which I'm sure the general public and this new generation who's more socially charged can relate to because they're sick of words and not actions. But there's also a way you're supposed to do things. And right now, what's going on is unhealthy and creating a lot of chaos that is not necessary. And I don't think a lot of people even learned how many positions in government we actually needed to protect our safety and privacy until they just recently got violated. So, but there are so many details that are coming out that you don't know they're actually in effect until it's official. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed, to get stressed out, to feel like, what am I doing? Like, I don't even know if am I supposed to still pay my taxes because supposedly he deleted the direct file option on the US Gov IRS.gov website. Elon, I'm talking about, not Trump, because he's not that smart to do all this. This is all his little henchmen. But my point is, if Elon's trying to do to the government Treasury Department for his own Doge purposes, like what he did to Twitter, then we're majorly screwed right now. And I don't know what this means for funding any other projects. I just know one thing: anybody who's had anything that's remotely dependent on the government now has to figure it out on their own after this year because they're not going to have that handout. They're not going to have that maintenance and security. And not to sound like one of these people that become like, super washed out, militant, bitter people, but as I get older, it is starting to look more like excuse me, the joke is on us, and that there's going to have to be a lot of self-sufficient, self-starting ways to survive in this country unless you have the money to pick up and move to another country, which not a lot of us do. But to those who do, I applaud you. God bless you, and I hope you're thriving, because there's a lot of us who probably would like to pick up and leave right now if we don't have anything. I mean, manage these people. Imagine these people in Altadena, Palisades, those people in California who literally have nothing, nothing left to their lives. And there's a lot of vulnerability that has happened since this administration has switched hands, because there's a lot of things that we have placed in strategic locations online and, well, hell, on hard copy that no one ever thought they would lose due to a fire or a national disaster. So when those pockets of vulnerability become exposed, a lot of people start realizing that that's what they felt defined them as a human being. I'm currently in this crisis of realizing that without a job, I don't feel worthy. And it's not true, but that's what our capitalistic society has made us feel, that we are not worthy for anything if we don't bring any money in and if we don't contribute something to society. We're just taking up space, which is harsh, but it's a reality that you have to think of, especially coming from a child of the 80s like myself, born in 78, who only knew anything about parents working, taking care of us, making us go to church, then letting us live our lives after 18. And some of the decisions me and my sister chose to do on our own have, resoundingly either given us tons of wisdom or tons of stress, you know, years later down the line. I mean, my sister has a family to take care of. I'm just maintaining myself somewhat. But at the same time, it all comes back to, can you handle it? Can you survive? Are you okay? Are you doing the necessary things to keep your sanity? You know, how is your mental? Because I've been checking out a couple times. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, mental health awareness is a thing. Shout out to AJ Brown. I almost talked to myself. Shout out to AJ Brown for even being asked that question during this Super Bowl week media day, speaking of how important mental health is to him, because he was very much vocal about it when he was on the Tennessee Titans, and which is one of the reasons why I loved him as a player, because not too many guys were coming forth until our very own Lane Johnson on the Eagles decided to speak about his anxiety struggles and all the things that helped him keep himself balanced, especially when his other teammate Brandon, I totally forgot his name, but he was a good O lineman with him, but that was like his right hand guy that helped him. They both had to deal with anxiety. I'm struggling with anxiety from time to time. Um, you know, this current administration may alter the ways of trying to maintain medication if they have an opportunity, and that could be very frustrating for someone like myself who maintains their sanity partially through medication. I mean, I truly honestly believe that marijuana should be legal at this point, if not for every state, because we're getting to a point where if that's what they want to argue about as far as maintaining your health and if it's real and if you need medication, then we should be able to grow our marijuana, or we should be able to get marijuana that's not, polluted with fentanyl, on our own, because if you're not going to look out for us, who else will? Um, but there are just a lot of things in life you have to consider that kind of work with some other aspects that we as a people in this country have been dependent on. And now we're at this point where you have to question whether you really need to be dependent on it, or is that just because you were fed this information that's all you know. And this is where kind of the militant folks and progressive folks make sense now, because these are people who pretty much went through life being challenged with the idea like, okay, what if I don't do that? Am I a bad person? Not necessarily. You choose to think another way. You choose to look at life in a different way. And that is a beautiful thing if you really think about it. It's nothing to be shamed. Um, but I do realize that I have very progressive friends too, and I have friends that are like me that are just like, whatever. But I understand the need to want to challenge the status quo, because as we're seeing right now, the status quo has no idea what to do without a comfort or security. that they thought they had in the government. And now it's coming obvious that we don't control anything. Only God does, in my opinion. And a lot of people don't believe in God, but I do, because I don't believe that human beings are smart enough to clearly be able to put their egos aside and think about others. So I don't think that is a human quality. I think it's a godlike quality because it's outside of us. So now all the circumstances that are happening that we cannot control, to me, prove we are not worthy. And we owe decades of love, grace, and mercy that is given to us every day to exist on this little floating planet. All right, enough of that. Going back to sports, shout out to AJ Brown too, because he decided to make his motivation for this win based on this poor little 10-year-old boy who is fighting for his life now from burns from the most recent plane crash that happened locally in Northeast Philadelphia, literally like 10, 15 minutes away from us. And you never think you would ever think or see a plane falling from the sky as a fireball and exploding into a tanker and breaking up into a million pieces on some houses, on some people, on some cars in the middle of nowhere. So it just basically altered everyone's life in that area forever. And I don't think you still can even travel that part of Cotman yet. Like, I don't know if it's totally open. I don't know if they've cleared all the evidence and all the debris. I know they've recovered the black box, but AJ Brown even deciding to put that tidbit out there that he's decided to use that boy um, as a motivation to win for him while he struggles to deal with his life as probably a disfigured young man shielding his sister from getting the bulk of that debris that was coming from the sky. So you have to think about the blessings you have in life, especially with stuff like that, but you also realize that sports can also cross into that personal part that makes fans stay passionate about their teams when life kind of crosses with sports. And knowing that it's a local story, it's obviously going to touch a lot of Eagles fans even harder because they know people that have been through that. My best friend Jen, her sister was shopping that night, and luckily she wasn't out at the moment it happened. I think that she said she got distracted and ended up going back into the mall instead of coming out of the mall. It's like a strip plaza area, but they called it the Roosevelt Mall. But she didn't get out. She didn't go out at the time that it happened. She could have been burned or at least gotten part of that debris, thrown on her. And she luckily was not a part of that. So there are a lot of people who had a lot of close calls. There's a lot of people who were able to stop their cars before that huge ball of fire impacted their coming down further onto Cotman and the Boulevard. And life will never be the same for these people. There are people who are still traumatized. There are people going to need tons of therapy. If they've never seen a therapist before, they're going to need it now because they're going to constantly see those images in their sleep, when they're sitting down, when maybe they're at the hospital recovering. That stuff stays in bed. That's something you would never imagine happening in your life. And with social media, now you got these clips rotating. Everybody who happened to be filming or had their dash cams on or happened to get the video in time to pull up their phone and say, what the heck just happened? They were able to film it and it's rotating all over the news. So, and social media never stops. People hold those images forever, until you pull it from your own file and people can't use it, people will just repost it because some people love living drama. Some people still can't believe it, so they can't stop watching it. It's like a bad car accident. You feel for the mother and the patient that were on that medvac, and obviously the pilot and crew. But knowing that little girl was the Shriner's child, who was finishing their process of surgery, and was almost like was bound to recover, and now their spirit, now their presence is everywhere, and all they wanted to do is just go back home. But I digress because this is getting depressing. But the point is, there are a lot of things that were thrown out there in news and images, and birds of a feather. I stress a lot when I randomly do these solo pods to understand, to think out loud, to make people realize that not everybody is out there thinking about sports 24/7 because life is still lifing. Even after this weekend the Super Bowl's over, whether they win, lose, or draw, life is still happening and there's a lot of stuff happening. And I feel like even when, the CoEd Edition returns, which will be soon, I haven't really been in the mood to pod. Obviously, you can tell I've been dealing with other stuff. We'll be back to kind of give like our pre Super Bowl pod and discuss things. But if not, we'll talk directly after the Super Bowl if we're in the mood, if you know what I mean. Um, and even if we are happy, it might take 2 or 3 days to recover after the Super Bowl to even get a pod together. So, um, but the thing about the sports cycle now is that there's a lot more options even after NFL is over. People who watch UFL, um, the WNBA will start ramping up their preseason after this unrivaled season wraps, which has been pretty exciting. I haven't been able to catch every game. I've just been seeing highlights, but I don't even know if I have true TV access, but I watch the ones that come up on TNT. Um, Hopefully in the future they'll be able to just stay with one national station so that they don't have to keep bouncing everybody around. But the WNBA is a perfect example of persevering through adversity and finding the support in the audience to support them, whether they watch it or not, because there are little girls out there who have a desire to want to play in the WNBA and who know that uh, there is an audience for it clearly. And even if people don't believe that people really do want to see women play ball, they clearly are showing that they do. Especially with the NBA kind of taking a hit, and also just understanding that the men in the NBA are starting to support women outwardly, and I think that's driving part of the force for people to kind of give the WNBA more of a look, more of a support system, more of a chance. Because Unrivaled, coming out of the three WNBA girls who founded it, Nafisa and Brianna Stewart. I think that it's shown that there is definitely a desire for a new look for women's sports on another level that can be 3-on-3 and as well as 5-on-5. So, yeah, a lot of possibilities in the sports arena. I think we're all going to need places of enjoyment where life is not being very enjoyable as far as national news. Sports is a nice little respite for those of us who really don't want to deal with anything else. And then those of us who that's just where their interest lies, is mostly sports. And then for the intellectual folks, it's good to just see the tables turn on the narrative that women can't play sports, and also seeing the business deals that are slowly being done behind the scenes as well. Um, there are a lot of mergings that are happening now with like former WNBA players and Olympic players. I just saw something that's just developing now with Sue Bird. What did I just see? Sue Bird and Allison Felix just combined. Hold on. I will find it. Just posted it on our CoEd Edition BOF IG page. Yes. Deep Blue and Always Alpha create women's sports first full service management firm. So Allison Felix's firm and Sue Bird's firm are going to merge as one to create a management firm for women to represent women in all sports. That's awesome. Sue Bird being former WNBA, Allison Felix being a multi-medaled Olympic legend, newly retired as well. But the point is that their stuff is popping for the women's, and there will be lots of opportunities behind the scenes and in front of the camera as well. There's a lot more. I mean, Candace Parker is out there showing her face on TNT, as well as being a um, very invested woman in the WNBA and in pro women anything. She's becoming a financier. Um, she wants to be that next version of Michael Jordan that takes over business as well as sport, and just give women a face and a comfort knowing that they can do what they want to do, no matter who tells them they can't. And that's good. That's positive because women are just smarter. We all know this. Um, Shout out also to, now that I just saw it pop up, but shout out to Joy Taylor. She is one of my favorite TV personalities who I feel like deserves better than FS1. Hopefully, big things are coming for her soon because I feel like she's kind of been targeted lately, obviously, with that lawsuit crap that's out there. Um, I feel like that she will overcome that because I think that her talent way speaks way more than her looks have. And I think that that alone has become a thing to hang on a woman when there's nothing else, is how attractive they are, to distract from the fact that they actually have talent. And I think that's what they're trying to do right now to Joy Taylor. There's a lot of hate behind the scenes with women, whether it be from other powerful men or other less than powerful women, um, as well as the general hate that always happens behind the scenes with sports guys and egos. And, you saw Marcellus Wiley coming at Ryan Clark lately, and that's just a waste of time. Everyone's always coming at Stephen A. Smith, but he's worked hard to be the head dog of where he's at. And it comes with that bravado and that mouth of his. So hate him or love him, he's in a position where he's supposed to be because he earned that. And so a lot of people are going to come at him, and he doesn't care because he knows that he's done enough to uh, make ESPN a very powerful sports platform, as well as the shows like First Take and stuff being able to help him spin him off his platform and do his own show and all that stuff. Now, mind you, I could do a month or two without Stephen A. Smith talking, but I respect his legend. But he makes me also miss he makes me miss that guy Scott, that I loved, that passed away years ago. Um, I'm horrible with names, as you can tell, as I get older. So just, you know what I mean. Mr. Booyah himself. He was the one guy that I think I would have loved. I would have loved to hear more of, because more than Stephen A. Smith, that's for sure. I just felt like he was the reason why there are, Nathaniel Burlesons now. Nate has edged a personality that he was able to get off of NFL Network and be on the Today Show. Was it Today Show? It's not Today Show. Good Morning America. No, that's Michael Strahan. Oh my God, I'm horrible. Forgive me. But Nate Burleson has been able to get out there and be outside of sports and also be able to be a face in journalism. And Ryan Clark will be the next one. I guarantee he'll be off of sports networks and eventually platform himself somewhere else, because his podcast, The Pivot, is very, very informative and very fun and entertaining and also very emotional at times. So I think that Ryan has a future outside of ESPN. But if it wasn't for Stephen A. Smith's, you wouldn't have the Ryan Clarks, you wouldn't have the Nate Burlesons. So I give that respect to him. But do I always like Stephen A. Smith? No, not everybody does. Trust me. And I definitely don't like to hear him talk about politics because he definitely seems so biased. It's not even funny. Um, and I would get on this whole tangent about Kamala, but I think I'm burned out. I've said enough. All I can say is that women rule the world regardless, as you can see what the guys are doing. And now you see why Kamala's loss is even more hurtful, knowing that not only did her party fail her, but, men failed her. The general public failed her. Um, there was a lot of cheatation going on in this election, but at this point, it's such a moot point, it doesn't even matter. But it's obvious that, this last election was definitely hijacked on so many levels, but that's just the way it's been. I mean, since we introduced the world to this Elon freak and all these Russian spies and cyber stalking, it's been a whole way to control an election. So does it give me hope about the future? No, it doesn't. But I'm gonna still use my vote if I can. But yeah, there's gonna have to be a lot of security protection from this day going forward that can eliminate any kind of skewing and dumping of votes, because that shouldn't even happen. Their elections should always be fair, regardless. I can take a loss if it's legitimately a loss. But if there's any kind of reports of throwing out dumping votes on any state, whether it could swing or not swing a vote, I have a problem with that. True or not, it's just something that shouldn't even be happening, period. And it's just unfair. But we here in USA, we allow the good as well as the bad and the bullshitty. And that's something that only God can really stop because clearly we are not sophisticated enough to fight back quick enough and fiercely enough to get this thing figured out and nipped in the bud for good. So until we get on our strong stuff, we get on our own BS, these little devils is gonna have a day. And I'm gonna keep praying, but I'm just hoping that some of y'all just keep it real with the general public and stop blowing smoke because it's getting ugly out there. And again, trying not to overreact to things. But what I will tell you is that every day is a new day. And hopefully, as the week goes on and I get me a very stable, manageable job, because I know it's coming, because I'm had it, we can all be able to breathe a little better, knowing that we're completely transparent as a country now and not blowing smoke, and completely transparency is scary, but it needs to happen because it's just not healthy to keep people in the dark for a long period of time. It's just not. You're not going to have a united country if you keep lying to people directly. And that's what we need to stop doing. So maybe that's what we're saying. The unveiling of the truth is a lot better than believing in lies because that is old. Speaking of which, definitely go back and listen to Beyonce's Cowboy Carter because American Requiem is exactly where we're at right now. So if you listen to that song and those lyrics, regardless of your feelings for Beyonce, I believe that it's exactly the mindset that we need to adapt. You just need to let things burn off and start over again and rebuild itself, just like the way this country has been burned down, rebuilt over and over again. We are in the burning down stage. So we build it back up, it'll be better, way better than it was before. But until then, adversity is always the best teacher. All right, so birds of a feather, all I can say is when we come back with the CoEd edition, we're going to talk some positive, hopeful news about our birds and media night and see how much Eddie had watched any of those clips because I've been posting on our CoEd edition page on IG. There were some obviously ridiculous media questions, but some were funny. But in general, media night is hell for the players, you can tell, because they just generally don't care for it. If they could just let them rest for those first 3 days and then maybe have like one night of media night and then just leave the rest of the week for strategy, planning, recovering, working out, maybe the week would go a lot faster, but I'm sure it seems like it's dragging for some of them. I'm sure that aren't used to this or like Jalen Hurts has been here before, so he knows the whole deal. But I just feel like there's a way they could handle media a lot better during a Super Bowl week. So, and I don't really care about the commercials because I feel like there's going to be a lot of commercials that are not going to be as good because now that we know that there's a lot of preachy stuff starting to come through some of these selling commercials. If you realize that I've never seen a commercial about Jesus come out more and more since like the last 4 years. And I was raised Christian, but at the same time, I'm kind of like not really resonating right now. Everybody's kind of cynical, you know. But then we had to deal with those 3 months of horrible campaign ads. So they can take them commercials back to just laughing about stupid stuff and just making it entertaining. It will be great. You stay away from the politics. You might have a successful Super Bowl night. Anyway, then again, you got Kendrick Lamar performing for halftime. So if he knows that the president's there, he might slip some crap in there just to make his point, which that's the only time I would love if he says some F you to Trump right in the middle, and then everybody go, whoops, not a whoops. All right. But as far as that, go Eagles. Let's hunt. Put Mahomes' head on a platter. Serve it up. My girl AJ, the Suburban Princess. I don't even know if I even started this introducing myself, but whatever. You should know by now. Words of a Feather will return with the CoEd Edition as soon as possible. And if not, go birds. We'll talk soon. Later.